requests the application tier for that specific file, downloads the file, and then adds that file to its cache before returning it back to the client, so that any subsequent request for that specific file is going to be served from the cache. So as you can see, the proxy is in the same LAN as the rest of the Team Foundation clients on the remote location, so that this file transfer is going to be much faster rather than downloading the file or a slow bandwidth connection. There may be some exceptional cases where, say, one or two clients at the remote site, just for a few days or just for for a short duration, they wanted to download a bunch of files. So in that case, maybe they don't need to necessarily go through the proxy. They can just download it directly from the application tier and then just work on that. Also, all the communication between the TFS clients and the proxy, as well as communication between proxy and the application tier, is using HTTP. That's the default. But you can configure it to use HTTPS. We will be providing more details on how to configure HTTPS as part of our TFS install and admin guide. Also, there may be scenarios where you have multiple such remote locations which all want to connect to the same application tier. In that case, there will be a proxy installed on each such remote location. Also, the application tier doesn't know anything about proxy. It just treats that as a regular any other client request. Even in high bandwidth scenarios, we might install proxies. The idea there is to kind of reduce the load on the application tier. Say you have different set of teams, all want to connect to the same application tier, but they all use different team system projects. So we can easily install a proxy for each team, and then they can use that for downloading any files from the version control. Also, we do have a file cache on the application tier, which is enabled by default. The idea there is to kind of reduce the load on the data tier. So this again can be disabled by updating the file cache root setting in the application tier version control web.config file. So here are some examples on which version control commands go through a proxy. So at a high level, you can imagine that any version control operation that involves a file download will go through the proxy if the client is configured to use proxy. So following are some examples. The get, so you're trying to download any version of a file, or you are trying to unshell some changes, or say undo, view, or branch, like any operation that involves a file download will go through proxy. So here in this slide, we'll just take a look at some more kind of the details on the detailed steps that takes place. Say if you initiate a download, a GET request, what kind of exchange takes place between the client, the proxy, and the application tier. As a first step, whenever, let's say, you say a GET on a specific file or a folder, the client is going to send what we call a GET request directly to the application tier. This is just a SOAP message. I'll show you a sample of how this GET request looks like. So once the application tier receives a GET request, it's going to first, of course, it's going to authenticate the user, and then once authentication is successful, it's going to do a bunch of authorization checks to make sure whether the set of files that the user requested, whether he has permission to download those files. So once it completes the authorization process, the server is going to send back what we call a GET response. So this will have details on what exact set of files